You'd think that in 2021 we'd stop getting suckered in by trailers. I mean, this is the entire art of them. They get you hyped for things that you know in your gut will probably never live up to the promise of the marketing, and this is especially true for horror movies, where often the advertisements are front-loaded with the scariest scenes that get us ready to pay hard-earned cash on a right stinker. I'm Josh from WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 amazing trailers that tricked you into seeing terrible horror movies. Number 10, A Cure for Wellness. If you're particularly scared by mouth horror, then you probably remember the marketing for A Cure for Wellness. The trailer teased the story of a man who gets trapped in a super creepy wellness center that's clearly up to no good, offering quick glimpses at the kinds of horrifically weird practices the doctors put patients through while they're there. Keeping things somewhat mysterious, viewers are given quick shots of a drill going into someone's mouth, patients submerged in water, and peculiar parasites in the drinking water. What does it all mean? Who knows, but it looks big, lavish, and spooky, and it promised an imaginative return to the genre for director Gore Verbinski. Of course, everything I just said is still kinda true of the finished film, but only in part. At a sprawling 2.5 hours in length, A Cure for Wellness features just as many good ideas as it does bad, but its convoluted plot, not entirely convincing acting, and wonky tone ultimately results in a major disappointment. Number 9, Alien 3. With most trailers on this list, the marketers clearly went all out on showing off the best moments from the respective movies. In the case of Alien 3 though, all the studio needed was a voiceover guy and 2 lines to get audiences absolutely frothing at the idea of the sequel. Those lines being, quote, "In 1979 we discovered in space no one can hear you scream. In 1992 we will discover on Earth everyone can hear you scream." End quote. I see what they did there. Now, admittedly, that is a little bit clunky, but it still did the job at the time. As teased for the first time ever in over a decade, the Aliens franchise would be coming home, and finally delivering on the apocalyptic scenario of the xenomorphs rampaging through the streets that Ellen Ripley had spent 2 movies trying to prevent. Of course, if you're listening to this, or watching it on your phone, or watching it on the toilet, or whatever you like to do, you're probably struggling to remember any of this actually happening in Alien 3, and you're not going mad. The sequel had a famously troubled production, with director David Fincher even to this day lambasting the time he spent on the flick. Reflective of this mess, the first trailer was put out before the film swapped out the story, resulting in a promise that simply never came true. Number 8, Slender Man. A Slender Man movie should have been an open goal for any movie studio quick enough to jump on the bandwagon. At the dawn of the 2010s, the character was sweeping the internet, and seemed poised to become the next big horror icon. He'd already appeared in video games to great success, so why not movies? Well, Sony came in a little bit late with their big screen adaptation, but still, the trailer seemed somewhat promising. Giving very little away and dealing mostly in atmosphere and unnerving images, it seemed to get what made the characters so scary in the first place. It looked like more than a cash grab, and while it might never have had the chance to have been a huge critical darling, it did seem poised to at least deliver some solid scares. But, spoilers, the final film, well, did not do that. In fact, the flick was every bit the soulless corporate hack job everyone worried it would be. Slender Man himself lost any of his terrifying impact, and the film completely missed the bandwagon, with nothing new to offer people to interest them again. Number 7, Rings. Hollywood really wanted to make The Ring a franchise, but they fell at the first hurdle. Unlike its Japanese counterpart, which pumped out sequel after sequel after crossover to a welcoming audience, the American version petered out after an impressive first movie. Still, that original remake was so beloved that it kept the series and lead villain Samara in the minds of fans eager to see more. Cue Rings, a soft reboot of the franchise that promised to update the concept for a modern audience. Though the effects looked a little bit ropey now and again, the trailer did seem very promising. Shots of the cursed videotape going viral, being played on airplanes and in chained emails, teased a larger, almost apocalyptic scale compared to the character-driven approach of previous movies. Combine that with the spooky whispers repeating 7 days over and over again, and you had a suitably exciting trailer. Sadly, those intriguing concepts teased by the trailer only made up a tiny part of the movie. In fact, the trailer pretty much is the film, and without any surprises, Rings was little more than a boring old retread. Number 6, Antebellum. It might be difficult to believe now, but the first trailer for Antebellum was mesmerizing. Drenched in mystery, audiences were given glimpses of two different time periods, one following black slaves on a plantation during the Civil War era, and another portraying the modern day. With an ominous 911 call offering the only dialogue in the teaser, audiences were left trying to figure out what exactly the plot of the movie even was. How do the time periods link? Why can you see an airplane in the scene set in the past? Who is that supernatural little girl disappearing in the corridor? What was going on? Well, these tantalizing questions, combined with the sheer prowess of star and producer Janelle Monáe, had people hyped for Antebellum to be a haunting tale reflecting real-life horrors, both past and present. And while that intent is certainly noble and it doesn't get completely lost in the finished film, the actual story itself didn't live up to those initial teasers. The answers to the previously mentioned questions all landed with a thud, while the violence on display made for a deeply unpleasant experience, but not in the good, reflective way. Number 5, The Nun. Now okay, fair enough, I'm sure some of you are watching this and are scoffing and saying that, well, a Conjuring spin-off was always going to be bad, why did you get your hopes up in the first place? I mean, after all, fans hated Annabelle, so why would The Nun, with a title as boring as The Nun, fare any better? Well, the answer is that the trailer, at least the first one, promised something that we hadn't quite seen from this franchise before. Going all in on the religious plot, The Nun's trailer promised big gothic scares with a solid cast and some visually stunning locations. The Nun herself, or as she's known in the movies Valak, was a terrifying presence in The Conjuring 2, and nothing was lost in translation in the initial teaser. Lurking in the shadows, Valak appears only briefly, but promises so much to come from her headline appearance. Sadly, the atmosphere of the trailer was completely lost in the finished movie. While it's not without merit and some new ideas, it is slow, drab, and utterly soulless. A villain like Valak remains scary in spurts because, of course she does, look at her, but she's mostly lost under a shallow script and some pretty daft plot twists. The Nun has so much potential, but you're better off just watching the trailer or sticking with The Conjuring 2. Number 4, The Dead Don't Die. I know I've said, this should have been an easy home run for most of the entries so far, but The Dead Don't Die really should have been an easy win with indie horror fans. You had Jim Jarmusch directing a zombie comedy with a cast that starred Adam Driver, Bill Murray, and Chloe Sevigny. And everyone from a katana-wielding Tilda Swinton to the likes of RZA, Iggy Pop, and Tom Waits also showing up to take part in the fun. The trailer admittedly wasn't laugh-out-loud funny, but it still looked like it knew what it was, and more importantly, it had Adam Driver saying ghouls in a way that you simply had to repeat to yourself in real life. There was promise there, and surely that cast wouldn't sign on for a stinker, right? Well, either actors have worse taste than we think, or the director was calling in some favors, as The Dead Don't Die ended up being a meandering, unfunny mess. At an hour and 45 minutes, it felt like a complete lifetime, with it failing as both a zombie movie, a satire, and also everything else in between. Number 3, Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark. Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark was at one point poised to be the next It. With a similar throwback setting, young cast, and fantasy framing, all of the ingredients were admittedly there. Also based on a series of books, the filmmakers had plenty of material to pick from, with some particularly gruesome ghouls and ghosts waiting to be plucked from the page and implanted on the big screen. The first trailer didn't disappoint either. It effectively set up the central premise of the storybook monsters coming to life, and the glimpses of said monsters also highlighted just how creative the filmmakers were getting with the designs. Ultimately though, the film itself didn't quite have the bite promised by that trailer. The dynamics of the young characters felt too familiar, the scares were lacking in creativity, while the plot ran in circles before fizzling out into a shrug. Hampered by poor CGI effects as well, the horror of the monsters was undercut at almost every step. While some were still memorable in spite of this, it didn't help the whole effort just feeling like a missed opportunity. Number 2, The Unholy. Released earlier this year, The Unholy squandered a solid horror premise. About a young woman who appears to have been visited and healed and given gifts by the Virgin Mary, Jeffrey Dean Morgan stars as a skeptical journalist investigating these miracles. All of this is established in the first trailer, which similarly highlighted the scale of these miracles, teasing the nefarious force that could be behind them. Visually, it looked impressive, with some evocative shots of fire and brimstone suitably building anticipation for the moment that these acts of God were going to be revealed for what they really were. The teaser also put the focus on a game Jeffrey Dean Morgan, like I mentioned, who, let's face it, can even make the worst movies at least watchable. Number 1, Demonic. I might be getting this wrong, but I'm pretty sure it was Liam Gallagher who sang "I'm feeling supersonic, I wish I'd never watched Demonic," and to be fair, truer words have never been spoken. Billed as Neil Blomkamp's return to form, the District 9 director dropped the trailer to Demonic, and as a horror fan who absolutely loves it when things go bonkers, I personally ate it up. The teaser drove home the insanity of the premise, that being, a woman in a coma lives in a simulation that doctors have made for her mind. And it's a simulation another character joins to get answers on a decades-old crime. That's already wild, but it gets even better. While in there, it turns out that the woman in a coma is actually possessed, and for some reason, the Vatican has assigned a team of Black Ops soldiers to hunt down something. So yeah, that's right, the Vatican has a group of Black Ops soldiers, I guess? As silly as that plot may seem, and it certainly does seem very silly, the trailer managed to make it work somehow in an almost self-aware, crazy way, blending genuinely striking horror imagery with this shamelessly pulpy plot. Perhaps inevitably with a story like this though, the end result crumbled under the weight of itself, home to nothing scarier than the film's unconvincing effects, but still, I kinda love that it exists. So, that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the comments below about these trailers. Did these get you to buy a ticket to these movies? And are there any ones I missed that fooled you into doing so? While you're down there as well, could you please give us a like, share, subscribe, and head over to What Culture Horror for more lists like this every single day. Even if you don't though, I've been Josh. Thanks genuinely so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.